Would love to know about your first interaction with resilience testing. How did you got to know about it, and how do you define it for someone new to the CNCF, like cloud native systems?
Sure. So, like I said, I actually started as a manual QA. So I have been in the testing world for quite a bit time, and I've seen how it happens within the QA space, what we do. So whether it was doing the integration test, because while I started as a manual QA, that's what I was essentially doing. But then I also spent time building applications and solutions. So I know that unit tests are written to test a particular functionality, right? So these kind of tests, unit test will test your individual feature that you have written. Integration test will test a bunch of features plugged in together and then see how it basically works. And then system testing does the entire end-to-end complete system test sort of. So I was very familiar with all of this. Regarding resiliency, I think interestingly, while I was at InfraCloud, I was also taking care of the blogs that you see. So the technical blog that we have, I was one of the co-editors sort of while at that time. And one of the engineers submitted a blog post on chaos testing using litmus chaos and something. And because I was a reviewer, I was just going through it. And because I was going through it, it felt new. It felt interesting as like, okay, there's something new that I can kill stuff while something is running, and then something will happen, and then I can see what's happening that way, right? So while I was reviewing his blog post, I was also trying it on my own. So I had Litmus Chaos installed on my system, and I was following his steps, also validating what he has written was correct or not. But then also on side by side, just running it on my Minikube cluster and just running those experiments that were there. So deploying something, clicking that pod kill, and then something happened, and then how it responded, things like that. So I tried that. That was my first interaction with resiliency as a whole subject, and as well as Litmus Chaos as one of the tools for performing chaos tests. And then obviously once I started doing this, I'm a history buff as well. So I spend a lot of time going behind the story of things, how it happened, whether it is tech, whether it is food, whether it is traveling. I'll always go behind and see how it started, because I think that helps me understand the whole genesis of how things are today, because it started at some place. So that's when I stumbled upon the Netflix blog, because they spoke about monkey testing and chaos monkey, and the whole chaos engineering as a concept. So I read bunch of other articles and got a better understanding of resiliency as a whole. So today, if I have to define it to anyone, I would say your unit tests actually test the features or test the application and see whether it is working as expected or not. But resiliency, on the other hand, it actually tests how your system responds to failures. So what you would probably do is you might have, let's say, a functionality to validate an email address. So as a unit test, you will pass an email ID to it. You'll check whether the regex pattern is working perfectly or not. You're getting a response. That's where your test ends. Your integration test, you might probably use an external service to validate whether the domain provided within the email is correct or not. So in your integration test, you will also test the external service. Now, where resiliency comes in is, what if that external service didn't respond to you in 1 minute? What if that connection dropped in between? Do you give a white page to your end user? What does your end user see? So I think a lot of resiliency comes from validating your systems, but I think it is also very important for user experience as well. And I would add one small personal anecdote over here. So I didn't mention, but I was working building Android apps as a hobby, maybe 5-6 years ago. So one of the apps that I built was a basic calculator. You add bunch of things, it used to calculate and give you results. And one of my biggest fears at that time was not using any external service, and I wanted everything to happen within the phone. So I use SQL, right? So the data stays on phone, no network, no third party APIs used. And the reason for doing this was, I was scared, what if the internet drops? The app stops responding and app crashes. What if the database that I'm trying to call, right, it has some issues and it drops, and suddenly it says your app is not responding and it crashes? So I didn't know the concept of resiliency back then, but I was worried about the user experience more. So I decided to figure out that no, I'm not communicating with the external world or apps. Everything happens on my phone. Everything is under my control, and nothing is going to crash. Now that when I came to know the whole concept of resiliency, I could have definitely applied this concept there and tested it before I released the application to public. So I would know how my external services are responding. What if I don't get a response, right? The app doesn't crash. How does it handle? And a bunch of other things. So yeah, your regular testing tests the features of your application. Resiliency tests how your system responds when something happens. Yeah. That's how I would put it in very simple words.